Silver Rain here. I won't lie. I'm afraid to go to sleep at night. People try to break in here and they make a lot of noise. And I hate waking up here. I hate waking up here every day knowing that, this is my prison and this is my life. And there's nothing I can do to save myself, Nothing I can do to save myself. This is my life, right? I mean, I tried to start my own business there in Phoenix. Oh, I better turn. I got Dutch, this earthquake live stream playing in the background, but I don't want to get into any trouble with YouTube there for running that around. But I don't want to go to sleep because I'm being ignored to death. I don't see how I'm ever going to get out of this room. I don't see how I'm ever going to get out of this trap. And there's so much about what has happened to me and what is happening to me that relates to you, that is important to you, that I just feel like I have to tell you. I have to tell you about my life, and I have to tell you over and over and over again. I mean, maybe Patrick Bet-David will see this and say, fellas, we really need to bring Silver Rain on because her story of America is really important. Or maybe Catherine Mayer of NPR will say, let's stop accusing other countries of human rights violations and look in our own backyard. Or maybe Henry Louis Gates' friends at PBS will say, we're tired of supporting this fraudulent find your roots story when we all know that the documentation trail ends way before Henry Louis Gates' fabrications do, and he's got a reputation. Let's talk to Silver Rain Runningcloud and get America on a good track again. Or maybe Roland Martin will do a series, a special production about my life. Maybe Roland Martin will promote my story. Because one thing is for sure, it's verifiable. Every fact is a verifiable fact, so proving I'm not a liar is easy as that. And the facts are pretty horrifying. Now, I talked to you about Northwestern University and how I ended up graduating late because I sued a European student for saying that all Black students there were just there because they were affirmative action and that Black students were not intelligent enough to be at Northwestern University. So I sued her and won through the University Hearings and Appeals Court. And Raymond Mack, who was the provost at the time, he asked to meet me and had a special meeting with me. And by the next semester, I was on academic probation for not having enough credits to be a sophomore. I didn't have enough credits. So they occupied me with trying to fight to stay in school because that was my life. I couldn't go back home. My mother had Andre and Tony, and she was fighting Ike for money. There was no room for me there and no way to support me there. And another uneducated American in Chicago job market, there was no future in that. It felt to me like if you ever saw an Officer and a Gentleman with Richard Gere, and when Lou Gossett is putting him through the ringer, and Lou Gossett says, I don't even know why you stay. And Richard Gere is in tears, and he's been just thoroughly exhausted and humiliated. And he screams out, because I don't have anywhere else to go. Well, that's how I was at Northwestern. And then the Europeans let me know, if you fight for freedom for Americas, you're going to pay the price. All your classmates that didn't put up a fight, they're going to graduate on time. even if they didn't study as hard as you did, even if they majored in film or speech or communications instead of literature, where you really had to read and write a lot. Even if they didn't work as hard for their degrees, they're all going to march. And guess what's going to happen to you, Silver Rain Runningcloud? You're going to be fighting for your life. I didn't put it together then, you know. I didn't put it together actually till last month when I was talking about it and doing this broadcast. I said, hey, isn't it funny that right after I won that case against Gail Bartels, I ended up on academic probation for not having enough credits, and that I never got a decent GPA and I graduated 2 semesters late? Isn't that a punishment? Isn't that a penalty? I remember Leonora Washington, was that her name? Or was it Watkins? Well, there was a music professor who was also a lesbian at Northwestern, and she was in on the University Hearings and Appeals Board. And she had like a really affected accent. And I remember that she was there and she pulled me aside during the trial. And she said to me, because I was defending myself, the dean of the Black House was there, but he saw I was articulate and understood, so he let me talk for myself. So there are other faculty people there. It's a formal event. And this professor of music, she said to me, you are obviously extremely intelligent. Why is your GPA just a 2.5? And I didn't know what to tell her. You know, because I'm in literature and graduate students are grading my paper and they know I'm a scholarship student. So if you're a scholarship student, no one's going to say, I'm not paying tuition for you to go to this school and get C's, right? If you're a scholarship student, everybody can dump on you because you obviously have no power, or you'd be paying your own tuition. You wouldn't be getting through on grants and scholarships and your own labor. You'd have some family power. And this was at a time when they were advertising grade inflation, you see. But what Maria Tomashko taught me at University of Massachusetts when I was in their graduate school program in comparative literature is that she grades on a curve. And when you're grading on a curve, somebody's going to flunk out. Everybody's not going to get a good grade. And when I was grading the college papers for my classes, I knew I couldn't submit all A's or all B's or all C's. I had to distribute the grades. Now, I read everybody's work. That's just how I am. But Michael Shepard told me that he just gives everybody B's and he doesn't waste his time reading the student work. And Sue Shen, she didn't hardly speak English, so I know she didn't read all the papers that she was grading because they would have all been in English, and she spoke Chinese. She was a Chinese, visiting Chinese student. In fact, when SARS first came out, they made Sue Shen leave school, and I don't know when she came back, if she ever came back. I just remember Jana Evans Brazil used to always try to join me when I was going out with Sue Shen so that she could spread stereotypes about me and talk about sex, which I never talked about, to try to make Sue Shen think that I was like a rapper or a tweaking girl or something. Jenna used to really trigger me with that because she was from Georgia and she changed from Greek literature to Black American literature. And then she ended up with a job in Haiti, where there's a great deal of European abuse of the Black people. And then I saw her picture and it didn't even look like her. So I don't even know who went to graduate school with me under her name, who was triggering me. I just know that I've been through hell and hell again. And it isn't fair. And it isn't right. And if Americans knew the truth of my life, there would be some kind of a reaction, because people don't want a world, a society filled with bullies. People don't want a world where psychopaths get the power to decide and make things happen. People want the American dream. And what is that? They told us that we would be judged by our merit, but that everybody would have a place, a secure place. They told us that our land was rich and abundant and that there was plenty for everybody. But they also told us lies like America's a country of immigrants. That's a lie. Immigrants have taken power. That's true. European immigrants have seized all the power. But this country was not built by immigrants. It was built by real Americans like me. And I want to add a new brick right now, a brick of truth, a brick of integrity. What they did to me at every level of my life is wrong. From Northwestern University putting me on academic probation for not having enough credits because I dared to stand up against a European student that insulted my entire race and made us all feel insecure. We were all so insecure there. But when she said that, other students came to me to cry about it and tell me about it. They wanted me to do something about it because I was the elected social chairwoman and I had already proven my capabilities. I was the youngest, but I was the only one really putting myself through school. I was the only one who had a corporate job every summer to pay for my books. I was the only one really taking care of myself. And I spent all my spare time studying. So I had a lot of respect among my peers. Oh, sorry, I got corn in my tooth or something. I had a lot of respect among my peers. They really respected me. So when there was trouble, they called me. If somebody was depressed because they didn't do good on a test, they came in to talk to me. I was the counselor. They nicknamed me Mother because I took care of people. I loved them. I helped them. I sincerely cared and they knew it. But I was taking care of myself. I was there alone. So I didn't realize till recently that Northwestern University, Raymond Mack, was punishing me. And when I looked at the presidents of Northwestern University throughout time, trying to figure out how did Shapiro and Levine get in there and let Sheldon Epstein rob the students? And how did Shapiro get the entire NUBA, the Northwestern University Black Alumni Association? I appealed to them to help me, to be involved in the story of my persecution by the European nationalist racism systems. And they completely ignored me. Some of them even attacked me. Some of them even attacked me. But when I went to the summit in Los Angeles to try to promote the Silver Rank Culture Train online education for students, homeschoolers, others who really wanted to learn what I had learned, since they weren't going to give me a spot, it didn't mean that I had not spent 16 years studying graduate school literature, studying American multi-ethnic literature of the world, and comparative literature is what I studied. And I was an expert in many fields and many disciplines because it was an interdisciplinary course of study. And I was eager to share that. And I was trying to make my own way, okay? I said, okay, I'm not going to get my inheritance, but I can set up an online school and teach literature. I'm sure there are a lot of people homeschooling who would want to be a part of it. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who graduated from college but didn't really get the culture that they wanted from it. They didn't really become refined, so they might want to become culturally refined. And do you know that University President Shapiro of Northwestern did not let the Black students talk to me? In fact, I waited all day in the lobby right in front of where they were meeting. And Shapiro saw me there. And when he was leading the people away for the end of the conference, it was almost like a little army of people because they all lined up behind Shapiro. And Shapiro is a short, stout Jew. And he was almost goose-stepping, leading them out of there. And as he walked by, he looked at me. He looked me right in my eye to let me know that he had beaten me, that the other black students had too much to lose by coming against the Jews, and that he saw any support of me of coming against the Jews because I was against European nationalism in America. And that's what I teach. That's my curriculum, is one author after another telling their story, the truth of their lives, the fictionalization of their lives. Canadians that were forced to live in chicken coops because they were Japanese Canadian, and the Europeans wanted that land in Vancouver. They wanted that beachfront land. So guess what happened to the Japanese fishing industry? It went kaput. It went kaput. But Joy Kawagawa wrote about it in her book, Obasan. And if you read that book, you would know too what it was really like to be a person who is a victim of that. And you might say, gee, that's wrong, you know? People from Europe shouldn't get the best of all the lands, especially not when the Japanese were there first and had a thriving fishing community. What right do they have? You see, but if you don't know about it, then you might think that what you see on public broadcasting is fine. When NPR says, yes, there were human rights abuses in China, you don't have to go all the way to China to report on human rights abuses. There are plenty right here. Right here in America, we got plenty of civil rights, human rights abuses being enacted by the Europeans against the real Americans to steal their land, to steal their water, to steal their future, to steal everything they've stolen from me. And I'm still alive to tell the tale. But nobody will listen to me. And I don't understand how I got totally blacked out. I mean, isn't there enough diversity in the world that somebody would be hearing me? But on Twitter, I hardly got any likes. On Facebook, I hardly got any likes. I mean, what does it take? What does it take to go viral? Because whatever it takes, I haven't got it. But I do have the best story in America, and the story that is most feared by the enemies of real American values. America was supposed to be the place where no matter where you were born and no matter what class you were born into, if you had a special talent, there'd be a place for you. If you had a skill or a talent, there'd be a place for you. I mean, we even promoted ourselves on finding ways for men like Stephen Hawking to communicate, men who had no working body at all. In America, they could still be great. But then we find out that Stephen Hawking was just a propaganda. He was just a creation to follow Einstein so that the whole world would think that only one race had access to genius. Only one race deserved to run the academy. But it seems to me that if everybody in the world knew that Henry Louis Gates and Hazel Carby and Brent Hayes Edwards and Valerie Smith were plagiarists, and the administration knew it, and they knew that people were stealing from the Ford Foundation and redistributing intellectual property assets, and this is all validated by the university administrations. They're not doing anything to stop it. Oh, yeah, they'll come down hard on people that fight for the rights of the enemies of the Jews, the Palestinian students. But will they police themselves or allow themselves to be policed? No, because they have boards. They establish boards. I remember seeing the board at Yale University in one of the alumni proxies for, electing people to the board at Yale University. And I swear to God, one of those men looked like a killer. He looked like a murderous psychopath. And I remember thinking, wow, smart move. If I was a bunch of bullies that were stealing the intellectual property of America and I wanted to keep it like that, and I was producing experts like Douglas Rogers to invade the Mojave Desert for Russia in the oil and gas industry, if I was behind an operation as big and evil as American universities, especially the Ivy League, I would want psychopathic killers on my board for intransigent opposition. I mean, you could just look the dude in the eyes. You could just look at his face in the photograph. And just like the picture of Dorian Gray, you could see the evidence of evil he's done in his life. Kind of like that picture of the King of England that's all covered in blood and wounds on his face and blood with the bloody little butterfly. You could just see the blood on his face. And he was on the Yale board. Well, I wouldn't want to come up against the Yale board if they could send a man like that after me. And if he's rich too, so he's got like a whole stable of guys like him. Yeah, scary, right? But if all Americans knew and really understood the nature of these institutions, they might say, oh, wow, well, we're not going to give our funding anymore. And we're going to start charging you taxes for that land. And we're going to start letting people take you to court for discrimination. And we're going to make sure that the courts have honest people in them that will actually see you pay the price for what you do. You see? But they not only took over the universities using the board of trustees for the universities, but they took over the courts, they took over law enforcement, they took over the House of Representatives, the Senate. Everywhere you look, you see Europeans. And everywhere you look, you see abuses of power. Is that okay? Because it's not okay with me. Okay? It isn't okay with me. It isn't okay with me to have a tooth that's falling out because of a bioweapon that's been inflicted on me. That I don't even want to describe it because I'm trying to stay kind of on the ground. So I don't want to talk about how interdimensional bioweapons can turn your life around. So I tried to start my own business, to make my own way, to get enough money, maybe to get my inheritance from Andre. But you want to know what I found? More psychopaths, more corruption. In Arizona, they had different people come in. Now, I have to say that Black Card Books did help me get my book organized and published. Because once I went through their workbook, I had the structure of my book. And I did have a head start because I'd written a thesis. And I'd done 8 areas of expertise for my doctorate. And I knew how to organize data, organize research, organize information. But Black Card Books really helped me out. But they also had a lot of people with computers at the back of the room. Now imagine that you're in real estate. So you decide to give a seminar. But at the free seminar, you're downloading data from everyone's computer. And for the people that join your little club, You want them to join your club, but you've already put tracking devices on their computer, maybe. And maybe you just want them to do the footwork to find your next leads. Because when I paid my money, $2,500, to the Troutmans in real estate in Arizona, they stole my first lead. The real estate association stole my first lead. The first customer I lined up, they stole them. So I wasn't going to make any money in Arizona real estate. I mean, there are only so many new people coming in, only so many people looking for homes. And don't you think for 1 minute that in a place where they have everybody under surveillance, they know who's there. They know about when that person's going to buy a home. And I really think they set her up. You know, she was like a homely European, a nurse, used to being dumped on, but getting a decent salary as a registered nurse. But she looked like a doormat. And this big fat guy started flirting with her and ended up moving in with her and just acting like her guy. But when I would see him, sometimes I could tell that he would hit on me if he had a chance. I could tell that he was not sincerely interested in this lady. But I thought maybe I'm wrong, you know, and she's got a man now, so she would be safe in a home. Because I didn't want a home because I knew I wouldn't be safe unless I got a gun and was ready to use it. Because people would be watching, tracking me, and if they find that you're a woman living in a home by yourself, especially a home I would want on plenty of land, well, you might come home and find somebody there at your house. I remember during snowstorms in Connecticut, I actually had a man start to walk up to my house because he was looking for a place to squat or a place where he could take over. Something that Juan Luis ultimately did. Juan Luis just moved in on me. When I tried to put him out, he vandalized my house. And he told me, if you call the police, I'm going to have you arrested. And I was breaking the law. I was importing marijuana from California for personal use. It got me totally off of mental illness drugs. But that was before marijuana became a part of an industry. And I met some of the growers, and they do not have your best interest. The growers who were occupying the retail industry for marijuana in Arizona, they legalized it while I was there. And the growers definitely saw me as an enemy, and they were mostly Jews. I didn't see Indian growers, even though Indians owned a lot of land. So while I'm in Arizona, before I actually started reporting on crime through social media posts, I was really just trying to make a living. You know, I published my book, but nobody read it. I ran an ad in the Yale newspaper. It didn't get me any customers. Nobody at Yale wanted to read about plagiarism by professors at Yale. Fancy that. When I ran the ad in the Yale Daily News, I thought for sure that my book would become a sellout, a multi-million-dollar sellout book. But a lot of people realize that if you know something, you're in danger because you know. And sometimes it's better to be ignorant, especially when you've got psychopathic murderers on your board. And especially when your professors are engaged in plagiarism. And especially when your professors are foreign agents working for foreign nations that want to own America and all American stuff. And that's the situation. That's the situation we're in. I mean, even if you didn't believe me then, you'd have to believe me now when you see the reaction of the Europeans and the Jews against the students standing up for Palestine. Right? Just plain logic tells us that. Europeans were not indigenous to those lands. They aren't. Just using common sense tells you that the United Nations is not about universal human rights. Or they would have helped me when I appealed to them. Amnesty International is not about universal human rights, or they would have responded when I appealed to them. Nobody listens to victimized Americans because the European nationalists want to wrap this up. They want to use their corporations and their anonymous standing to take advantage of everybody. And they beat their own selves when they took away land from the farmers in Iowa and Idaho and Missouri and Kansas. And Willie Nelson did his best, didn't he? Didn't Willie Nelson do his best to say, Farm Aid? But it was too late. John Deere stockholders were already set to make money off of the control that John Deere was going to have over farming, your ability to get your work done. So it wasn't long before the Norwegians, the Scandinavian people, moved into the Midwest to make sure that they can enjoy their beautiful mountainside towns in Scandinavia, but also eat from America and vacation in the Dominican Republic. The whole world to serve the Europeans at the expense of the whole world. So when I saw lately the ranchers saying, hey, my family's been ranching for 3 generations, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's about when you stole my land 3 generations ago. That's about right. So yeah, okay, you've been doing this for 3 generations. You stole it from me and my family, who had been here since forever. And then you start the 3 generations, but now their own people were rousting them out. Beef USA, the beef people, they actually went to England to negotiate the supply and demand for beef. You know what the British did to Ireland, right? You know how the British starved the Irish using military power and made the Irish raise cattle in their emerald green land for European consumption. And the Irish were left to just eat potatoes. And then there was a potato famine, so the Irish were starving. But they were given a lot of liquor from potatoes, and they were categorized as a bunch of drunks by the British. And that's why Sinead O'Connor, God rest her soul, was silenced and persecuted so much because she didn't forget that in the global European nationalist hierarchy, Ireland had been abused. And maybe the Irish can come to America and throw their weight around with my people, but not with the British. Not with the British. Well, Foxy's crying. He really needs a bath. I'll have to bathe him. I have to bathe him in the sink because I don't have the facilities that I need to bathe him in the bathroom sink. So I don't have the facilities I need. And I'm still up this late at night because I just don't want to wake up here again. And I don't think Star Trek's coming for me. And while I still believe that there is an interdimensional aspect to this life, I'm not so sure that they're going to save me before I lose my life. So I have to go back to fighting in this reality. I have to go back to trying to be heard. I have to go back to asking people, please tell my story. And I know my story has a lot of parts. And I know the parts of my story affect many, many, many quadrants of this society. And I know that once my story is publicized and gets out and verified, that a lot of Americans of every race are going to want to protest the status quo. They're going to want to protest the direction that we're heading. They're going to They're going to want to protest psychopaths in their families being empowered to steal their stuff and deprive their children of their inheritances. You know, I have children, and my children would like to have benefited these past 10 years from the wealth that I've inherited, that I have been deprived access to. My children might have found ways to use lands that I would have developed in Oklahoma, my land. But the European judges, Judge Butner, even the governor of Europe, you see, I tagged them in posts. I drew myself to their attention. I wrote in their comments. And I know they read them. What's wrong, Foxy? Give me that food. He likes me to play with him sometimes. Like, he's a boy dog. So give me that food. Give me your food. You better give me that food. I made him pork chops. And I also gave him a little corn because he liked the corn. But I made him a delicious pork chop. But I think he's having trouble with his teeth too. But he didn't eat it. Oh, look how white that's getting. I guess because I put makeup on it. I don't know. You know, suffering these diseases is very hard too. And knowing that our medical industry is in cahoots with the enemies of our country isn't very reassuring. But you see, if I had my inheritance, I could find somebody who could do my teeth without inserting bioweapons in the caps and things like what Edmund Eves did. You see what they've done to me from so many aspects of society. It's happening to other people too. Maybe only one or two of the things that they have done to me is happening to you. And when I say they, I mean the European nationalists. I mean the Europeans that get to go to dental school, the Europeans that get to go to medical school, the Europeans that get to occupy positions of power, who have all worked together to make decisions individually, but in the same agenda. And they're silencing me right now. How am I being silenced? Why isn't anybody telling my story? And I ask myself this, and I just don't see a way out. You know, I don't see a way out. I don't see a way out. When I tried to build my business online, I learned that if you use course developer software, the course developer software company can take all of your work and own it and disappear. When I used JotForm to create a questionnaire, I created a bank of questionnaires and they all just disappeared. And when I put up a website and filled it with the most beautiful illustrations that I had made myself, graphic arts that I'd made myself, GoDaddy took administrative control of my website and made sure that any advertising revenue that came to that website, they got it. They disconnected me from Google Analytics. They disconnected me from Cloudflare. They disconnected me from JotForm, and my data just disappeared. So if you can't build a website and have it secure, how can you do online business? If you've got an organization as big as GoDaddy, hiring hackers from Sonoran website development, and I met these hackers. I visited them in their office, which was over an auto parts store and also was an insurance company. They were just sort of using the desk because they were hackers. And what they would do is that Michael Silvers and Bill Walsh would recruit entrepreneurs, people who wanted to start their own business. And they would do free teachings and give you an opportunity to join their club at an exorbitant rate, like $36,000, $40,000, right? The only people I saw who actually bought that were a couple, and they were homosexual dentists, and they would make a lot of S&M jokes. And the one man was younger and one man was older, and the younger man looked embarrassed, as if he wasn't in the relationship for real, as if he was just in the relationship because the guy helped him get his dental practice started. But they had money to burn. They had money to throw away, right? They were the only people I saw who actually bought that $40,000 membership. But like most con men, like most shills, they weren't really selling the course. They were trying to find the people that were serious about starting their business. They were trying to find the most dedicated and hardworking entrepreneurs. And then they would just give you a lot of free information for 2 days. You go to a 2-day workshop. And while you were there, they'd be hacking into your computer. And if you were taking notes with a notebook, they'd be hacking into your notebook. I know this because I brought my computer there and noticed it was hacked. So I quit bringing my computer there. But then when I took their advice on services that they recommended, like Fiverr and GoDaddy, I found that they had really thrown me to the sharks. And then I found that Michael Silvers and Bill Walsh were a part of GoDaddy. GoDaddy was one of their businesses. So when they're finding the most ambitious entrepreneurs in the Phoenix, Arizona area, and they're advertising and we're all coming out, they're stealing our contact lists, they're stealing our work in progress, and they're telling us to go to other vendors that will steal even more. That as you develop your website, they're stealing it. As you write your book on Kindle, they're interfering with it. They're downloading it too and putting it in translation and selling it through other vendors in other countries at prices lower than yours. I mean, I found my book was being sold in other places, but how could it be sold when I didn't sell many copies myself? I didn't see any copies, and I didn't get any funds from my sale of books. And I don't even think that, because I didn't use my own ISBN number, I don't even think that I had rights, to tell you the truth. So even the self-publishing thing was kind of a scam. And I was worried about it at the time, but I felt like, well, it'll be worth the risk and worth the loss, because if I get the book out there, then so many people will be outraged at proof of plagiarism in the Ivy League and plagiarism of the Ford Foundation, that I'll have it made. I'll be able to go on. And then I start the International Ladies Chamber of Commerce. And I get 4 other women from the Bill Walsh people to work with me to develop this organization. And they end up stealing the plans we made, starting another organization of their own, and leaving me as the vice president of nothing. But I'd already set up the websites with the products. But GoDaddy got in there and interfered. They disrupted the entire website. They made it clear I was never going to be able to monetize it, because they were right there as predators, owning the IP, where they could come in and out however they wanted to. And when I asked them for the passwords to administer, they really freaked out. They gave me such a hard time. So I couldn't start my own business using online. And if you can't start your own business using online in this world, then you can't have a business in publishing, book publishing and teaching courses without access to the internet or a university forum? You see, it was essential. A good, clean, crime-free, hacker-free cyberspace environment was essential to my success. So I had to give up the idea of being that. I had to give it up and go back to social media, trying to drum up enough awareness of what's happening to me. But in line to happen to you and your kids. That's the next step. Just like these bioweapons are not designed just for me. They're not producing them in Ukraine just for me. They're not designing them at the Charles Lieber Institute of Harvard University just for me. They're not creating micro robots at Boston Robotics just for me. No. They're doing it to get you. They see me as on my way out. I can't get out of this hole they've got me in. And I don't know what to do about it. I mean, would you ever have thought, okay, after he ate his food. Good boy. Good boy. He ate his food. Oh, but now his little teeth are hurting. He's scratching his teeth on the floor. I don't know if you can see him. Poor little Foxy. Where is he? There he is. See him right there? His little teeth hurt. Oh, Poofy. I know how it feels to have teeth that are hurting. Because my teeth are hurting. And I'm afraid to sleep at night here. Because they try to break in. It's hard when nobody cares about you. It's hard when nobody loves you or cares because you're too scary. Because they don't want to get hurt from being near you. And I also don't share a lot of interests with a lot of people. You know, I'm a very serious person. I don't drink. I smoked marijuana, but that's before they contaminated and poisoned it with heavy metals and other things to make you sick. I miss feeling normal. I miss believing in all the myths of America. I miss being innocent. I miss being not a victim. I miss the idea that people will care about injustice. I miss the thought of thinking Americans would fight back against encroachments on their liberty and encroachments on the American dream. I miss having faith in something bigger than myself, my nation. I miss believing in America. I'm sorry I know so many facts. Well, Foxy's crying. And that always makes me feel like I need to do something. Come here, Poofy. Come here. Come. Foxy, come. Come on. He's getting kind of old, I guess. He's getting kind of old, my little poofiness. Look, Poofy. Look. Want to be on the camera? Oh, you are the sweetest. You are the sweetness. Who's the sweetest? the sweetness, I've had him. I've had him for years. Since 2011, my children gave him to me to help keep me alive when I fell into such a deep state of hopeless despair. When I realized that the University of Massachusetts wasn't going to give me my degree, that was when I realized that, oh, wow, Yale did have the power and Harvard did have the power to completely blacklist me. And I was almost 50. I even tried to move back to Chicago and get a job in computer science because Willard Evans, who had been the CEO of People's Gas, was one of my classmates. And he said, oh, they still use COBOL in American, in Chicago corporations. They're still using COBOL. You could probably get a job as a programmer. Even though I was like 50, I was at one of the Northwestern University alumni functions. And Willard Evans usually had a party at his home in Skokie at a time that would conflict with the party that the Europeans were having. So all the Black American students would be in Willard's basement instead of at the big university function, unless you had a car, you see. But if you flew in for the reunion, you couldn't go from Skokie to downtown Chicago where the good party was. And being a Black American student, I wanted to see the people I knew, so I figured they'd be at Willard's. But I remember the last year I went to Willard's, hardly anybody showed up at Willard's. I think they went to the real party. It doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there. It's just the way that you will find other Black Americans working to advance the European nationalist agenda because they get rewarded for participating in that system. And I had my chance. When they let me in Yale, I could have made it very clear that I would work against the American people. And then I would have been like Brent Hayes Edwards. I would have gotten a chance. But instead, when I was trying to get my dissertation read by my advisor, Elizabeth Petroff at the University of Massachusetts, she asked me, how did I think Frederick Douglass learned to read? How do you think Frederick Douglass learned to read? She asked me 6 years into the program while she was trying to get me to do anthropological work on quilts and being unavailable for meetings because she was having such problems with her marriage that she was, not available, not there during her office hours, not there during the summer. When I'm trying to write my thesis at Yale, Hazel Carby leaves before the summer even starts and never comes back till fall and doesn't have time to meet. So they ignored me to death. So I didn't get my PhD because Maria Tomashko, who took the place of Elizabeth Petroff when I saw that Elizabeth wasn't going to do any work, she said to me that if I wanted people to read my chapter, I would have to drive all around Massachusetts countryside and personally beg them. And we had an oral contract. I said, listen, my kids are getting ready to go to college in the next couple of years. I need to have a position to get discounts on their tuition, and I need to have a job to help pay for their tuition. I can write this in 6 weeks. Can you read it that fast? Can you read it and get it back to me every week? I give you something, you give it to me in a week. She said, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. 3 months later, she said she had not read the introduction I wrote for grammar and spelling. She said, well, I haven't read it for grammar and spelling yet. Grammar and spelling, that's what you do for a high school student. When you're the advisor for a dissertation in comparative literature, you're reading for ideas and you're looking for original content. Oh, Foxy has to go to the bathroom. So I'm going to leave it here, that everything I've tried to do, from entrepreneurial, from academia, even just trying to have a safe place to live. I've been sabotaged and I've been ignored. I have told people the facts of how I got here. It is not because of my negligence or anything that I have done wrong, except stand up and speak out against the European nationalist racists, courts, and corporations that are stealing from America and stealing the hope right out of our lives. Well, it's pretty late here now. It's like 4:36 in the morning here, and I'm going to let Foxy go to the bathroom there in the bathtub, and I just clean it and bleach it with disinfectant and everything. And so it's very sanitary, but I'm just at the end of my rope. And I know, that the Commander Runningcloud log and the thought, that the things I was learning from Far Sight Institute's conversation with Harvey, and the things I was learning from Linda Moulton Brown, and the things I was learning from Carrie Cassidy, poor thing, and the things that I was learning from Michael Salla were all making me think that my way out is up, and the only way up is above what's happening in American society, and the only way up and out of European nationalist racism globally is a superior consciousness, a superior race, a superior people, because the Europeans have their foot straight up my ass.